What is up? Welcome back to the PFF podcast. This week, we'll be giving away a subscription of our brand new PFF Elite package. That includes our signature stats. That includes award-winning fantasy analysis. That includes award-winning fantasy tools and much more. A $200 value. We'll be doing this all summer. You guys got to go leave a review on iTunes, 5-star review, leave an email address or a Twitter handle. We'll be in contact with you. Last week, the winner was Dave Tuska DFS. He got a free Elite subscription. Like I said, that's a $200 value. You guys are missing out if you don't do that. If you don't win, though, don't be mad. Go ahead and go to profootballfocus.com/FanDuel17 or profootballfocus.com/DraftKings17, and you make a $10 deposit there. You get PFF Edge for free, a $39.99 value for free with just a $10 deposit. These are great deals, guys. Go ahead, do one, do both. You'll get Edge for free, or you have a chance of winning Elite for free if you leave that 5-star review. So make sure to go ahead and do that. We got a good show for you today. I'm Mike Renner, and I'm joined today by Steve Palazzolo, not Sam. He's on his way to America at the moment. He's packing up his stuff in Ireland on his way overseas. And we also have a special guest with us, PFF's resident quarterback guru, a title that he had to pry away from Steve Palazzolo, actually, and get on his own. Zach Robinson here to join us, talk about some quarterback battles. Zach, how you doing today?
Good. I'm sure like you guys, just waiting around all summer, man, for some ball to start up. So we're getting closer, but things are good.
I know. Cannot wait here. We're excited. Football's almost back. You know, teams will be opening up training camps this week. We'll get to look at all the QB battles going around the league. And we have Zach on because Zach and Steve host the PFF Throwcast, a QB-centric podcast, every week during the season. They've been going through this offseason, breaking down every starting quarterback in the NFL. They'll be continuing that throughout the season. It's a very good podcast. You guys should go listen to it if you listen to this, and if you like quarterbacks, you'll enjoy it. But let's get right into it. The battle that I want to say has maybe the most playoff implications at the moment, one of them, the Denver Broncos, Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch. Siemian won it out a season ago, had an all-right year, probably better than a lot of people expected, but it still wasn't great. Who do you see taking this one when it's all said and done, Zach?
Yeah, Siemian was pretty up and down last year, like you said, and just had most of his problems, I think, just came from just not seeing coverage clearly and throwing a lot of balls, turnover-worthy plays, kind of inside the numbers is where he specifically struggled. But, man, he's really accurate passer. I think he has, in terms of looking at him and Lynch side by side, I think he's a better, passer. But Lynch, brings a little bit more with the arm strength, athleticism. I think, if it's close at all, you have to go with Lynch just to see what you had. You spent, first-round pick on him last year. You kind of got to be careful with his confidence, still a young player. And then, a couple times when he started those games last year, didn't look well. So I'm interested to see. This is obviously the biggest one. But I think when it's all said and done, Paxton Lynch will wrap it up.
Mike, I'm here too, man.
Oh, okay.
You never introduced me, buddy.
I said I'm with Steve Palazzolo. I mean, I didn't give you a chance to speak, but I knew you'd speak enough when it's all said and done.
You said Zach stolen my thunder, and you only address him. You just forgot about me this whole time.
You've been gone for so long, Steve. I just forgot.
Yeah, I think Paxton Lynch has to get a chance to win the job, doesn't he? They invest the first-round pick, and I don't think as good. That defense was so good last year. And they should have been a playoff team. They actually, if they got into the playoffs, had a chance to go to the Super Bowl behind that defense. They had a chance because they were so good at stopping the pass. But I thought Siemian really held them back offensively last year. And, you made the point, he maybe exceeded expectations last year, but they weren't very high. So I think you got to give Paxton Lynch an opportunity. And I thought Paxton coming out of college needed time to develop. I think he, was one of those top tier type of quarterbacks that needed a little bit of time, and maybe that rookie season is what he needed. I think you have to give him every opportunity to win it.
Trevor Siemian was so interesting to me last year because he did some things very well. He threw with anticipation, I thought, extremely well. But at the same time, sometimes those throws with anticipation was almost just like he was guessing out there. He had one of the craziest stats I saw from him was he had the lowest sack rate against the blitz last year of any quarterback in the NFL, which doesn't really make sense considering how bad that offensive line was. You would think he'd be at middle of the pack at best, and also being a young quarterback. It was almost like he was a robot out there. As soon as he saw a blitz, he was going to this XX next receiver no matter what. He just had this sort of robotic nature to him against that. I think he's really fighting an uphill battle here, though, considering what you guys said about you invested the first rounder in him. The difference between the two has to be so enormous for Siemian to actually win the job.
Right. Yeah. No, I think what you said about Siemian sums it up, man. A lot of predetermined kind of outside the number timing stuff, and he looks good when it's flowing within the offense. But then as soon as he's got to, make that next read or slide in the pocket at all, he played behind a tough offensive line last year. Obviously, we saw some pressure numbers pretty high. But I'm with you. I think, Paxton Lynch overall should close this job.
We talked about Siemian quite a bit on the Big Time Throwcast, Zach, and the one awesome stat that we'd always pull out, if you look at his passing map, there was no really good area that he threw the ball, especially the middle of the field. You already mentioned that. But deep down the field, 20-plus yards to his left for some reason.
Right.
108.1 passer rating, 420 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. But just his PFF grade was off the charts to that one particular spot. It was like that was his thing. Everywhere else, he kind of struggled a little bit. He was okay throwing the ball outside the numbers, timing routes, but like you said, a lot of predetermined, pre-snap type of stuff.
Maybe they just have Emmanuel Sanders run goes all next year. That's the only route they throw.
That's the strategy.
All right, so we're all probably in agreement. Paxton Lynch probably ends up winning that job. Let's move on to another interesting quarterback competition, the Cleveland Browns. Our first three-way of the podcast here, Deshaun Kizer, Brock Osweiler, Cody Kessler. Who takes it? And I'll have to give this caveat. Zach has maybe needs to be disclosed. He was training Deshaun Kizer pre-draft, so take his opinion with that in mind. Go ahead.
Got to know Deshaun pretty well throughout the process and just see what kind of player he is. But I think this one will come down to 2-horse race with Kessler and Deshaun, and I think that Deshaun could handle it mentally with the playbook and everything heading into it. I just don't think it's really necessary right away. I would play Kessler. He did, some good things last year, can operate the offense fairly well. It's just always going to come down to him. Does he have enough arm to really push the ball kind of outside the numbers and down the field, timing routes? All those things outside the numbers, there's just not a whole lot of pop. And I think, I think that Kessler will get that job. If you look at their schedule, it's a really tough first 8 games. They've got some tough teams on there. So I can see midway through the season, Kizer coming in, whether it's poor play from Kessler or just the team needs a little spark, see what you got with your second-round pick and see what he can do, because they're going to have to find out at some point.
Yeah, we talked about this on the Cleveland Browns QB Big Time Throwcast where we broke down each guy. But with Kessler, he is very accurate. That always shows up on tape. But the poor arm strength also shows up on tape, especially when you're watching so many NFL quarterbacks back to back to back to back. The ball definitely comes out of Kessler's hand differently and not in a good way. But it is one of those things where you have reports that his arm strength's a little bit better. And if that is the case, I think there's something to work with Kessler. The thing that gets me the most for a guy that's supposed to be on that game manager type of spectrum, he is a little bit slower in the pocket to recognize things, does take a few too many sacks. We charged him with a ton of pressures last year. Cleveland Browns fans a lot of times say, well, our offensive line's terrible. Kessler's always under pressure. And a lot of those are his own doing. So for a guy that needs to play like an Alex Smith, like a really good game manager, he is a tick slower than I would like to see, but he's very accurate. And if he does improve his arm strength a little bit, intrigued at what he can do, whether it's with Cleveland or someone else, because I do think ultimately they want Deshaun Kizer to win the job, because there's definitely a lot more upside there with his tools, his arm strength, his ability to drive the ball down.
Do not say upside.
Oh, no. Did I say upside?
You kind of did. All right. But
potential.
the Kessler thing is interesting because, like you mentioned, he took 7 sacks last year and was very slow to process stuff, but at the same time was incredibly accurate, had some interesting, advanced stats that look good in his favor. But the thing about him last year was we kind of got mixed signals from the coaching staff. We heard that they loved him coming out, but then all of a sudden they couldn't stop benching him once he was on the field. So I don't know really what to make of him in that regard. But like you said, if the arm strength improves, there's enough there to where if either he or Kizer wins, as a Browns fan, I'm happy. If Brock Osweiler ends up winning, I'm not going to be as happy. But like I said, if either of those two guys win, I think as a Browns fan, you just have to be there's something to get excited about there, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. I mean, I think everybody's getting the reports coming out of OTAs and minicamp was Kizer was lighting it up, especially the last couple of weeks. So there's definitely some excitement, I guess, with Brown fans heading into the season and something to hopefully build on, for the future with this staff. Because I think the staff's going to be there for a while. They just got to find that guy.
I think it's hilarious because I don't know that you could find two quarterbacks that are as opposite as each other as DeShone Kizer and Cody Kessler. Kessler makes the easy throws them accurately. Kizer will miss a lot of the easy throws, but make some special throws. I mean, they're just completely different types of players. Can't wait to see them in camp, and especially side by side.
So, Zach, you went with Kessler. Steve, who are you going with winning this?
I think Kessler's the guy early in the season, but like I said, they want Kizer to be the guy sooner rather than later. So I think Kessler's the guy first. But look, the Browns are still in the market for a quarterback in the future because they have so many draft picks. So they could do anything.
No, I agree. I think Kessler does end up winning it when training camp is over. Let's move on to, like we said, there might be hope for the Browns. Let's move on to one where there's not nearly as much hope, we'll just say. The New York Jets, Christian Hackenberg versus Josh McCown, with maybe Bryce Petty as a little bit of an afterthought. Break it down for us, Zach.
I like McCown pulling it off. Don't think, like you said, anybody really expects this season to go well for him. So I think at some point, fairly early, the schedule is fairly favorable starting off the first 6-7 games. It's not too terribly tough. So maybe they'll, let McCown play, see how it goes. And then, you're going to see Christian Hackenberg at some point. They've got to see what they have with them, this staff and regime, that they might not be around next year to see what ultimately happens in the future. So seeing what Hackenberg's got, maybe he can, provide something for him. I personally don't see it, but give him the opportunity to do it. But, like you said, not expecting a lot from the Jets this season. I think McCown starts it off and then Hackenberg plays, maybe midway throughout the season.
I think the Jets are just waiting on Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen. Let's see which college quarterback really emerges this year for that potential number 1 overall pick. I mean, what you have in Josh McCown, a guy that will make every now and again will make some ridiculous plays under pressure, but more often than not, bad plays under pressure. And then Hackenberg, one of the lowest graded quarterbacks we had in college every single year that he was at Penn State. So he went in the second round. We were on record saying we wouldn't have drafted him. So people that follow PFF, it's no secret that we're not particularly high on Christian Hackenberg and his skills, but the Jets took him in the second round. So I agree with Zach. They're probably going to give him a shot. I mean, I think McCown ends up starting because you're going to go through training camp and watch these guys play football next to each other. McCown's a better player than Hackenberg. Yeah. And honestly, Bryce Petty's a better player than Hackenberg. But so I'm going to say McCown's going to be the guy. And then, they give Hackenberg a shot at some point when they're, 1-6 or whatever it might be.
Hackenberg's preseason stat line last year, 17 completions, 47 attempts. That's a 36.2 completion percentage. Not good. And his quarterback rating, 35.8. So,
but he started like 4 for 6. And the guy that put me on this special list of Hackenberg haters was tweeting at me about how he's going to the Hall of Fame. But, kind of fell off.
This competition, it reminds me of, the movie Alien versus Predator. The tagline for that was, whoever wins, we lose. That's a competition now. Whoever wins, it really doesn't matter.
Your 2017 Jets. We're trying to keep Jets fans around on the podcast here, Mike. Don't end it that early. Everybody has hope. It's still the summer.
I'll be honest. I love the Jets' approach. They're the first team to embrace tanking in the NFL. It's very valuable to have high draft picks. There's no doubt about that. Like, they have some talent on the defensive line, and if you get a number 1 quarterback who hits, you're in a good situation. So I embrace the strategy of the Jets. But, yeah, I don't think it matters. I think McCown does win, though, this competition. So for what it's worth. Moving on to the Chicago Bears, who themselves have a young quarterback that they're trying to groom, Mitchell Trubisky, versus Mike Glennon, who they paid a lot of money to this offseason, $15 million plus a year. Who takes this one?
I think they would like obviously Trubisky to sit for a little bit, let him play. They signed Mike Glennon a pretty hefty deal, for the first couple years, but I think Glennon pulls out of it. Same thing with the Bears, like pretty common theme with just not expecting a whole lot out of them. But I think they're going to find that Trubisky is going to pick up the offense pretty fast. That offense he played in North Carolina, it was a spread, but they're working full field reads, and he's very comfortable, playing within the pocket and scanning and getting from guy to guy. So I think it's only a matter of time before he plays that. And not to mention Dow Loggains' system last year, it was plug and play, 3 different guys that got in there and played really well in that offense. I think it's really QB friendly. The concepts make sense. It's fairly simple formationally in what they do. So I want to see Trubisky earlier than most, and I think he could handle it because he also has some athleticism to kind of bail him out if things aren't going exactly how he likes.
I don't mind rolling with Glennon for a little bit. I'm all for if a team truly thinks the guy needs time to develop. Even the same thing with Jared Goff last year when the Rams said, and it might not have been true, but they said, okay, he needs time, we're going to wait. If Trubisky, if they think he needs time, let him take the time, whether that's 4 games, if it's 8 games, if it's 12 games, if it's the whole season. I'm fine with that whole philosophy. So I think they end up rolling with Glennon initially. And I hope they just stay patient with Trubisky, a guy that they did make a big move for. And I know the Glennon money seems high, but, for quarterbacks these days, they're out of that contract in a couple of years. But I think there's something to letting Glennon start things out, keep the pressure off Trubisky and easing him in. So I think Glennon wins the job initially, but can't wait to see what Trubisky can do. Because like Zach said, I think, they've shown that they can they can have success with multiple quarterbacks, and I think Trubisky's in a good spot despite everybody kind of making fun of the Bears and how they approached the draft last season.
No, I agree. I think we're all on the exact same page in that they had the Glennon deal and they made that deal with the draft in mind, saying whatever, we're going to get a quarterback in the draft also, but we don't want to rush anyone in right away before they're ready behind an offensive line that's good, but not incredibly good pass protection wise. It's not, Dallas Cowboys from last year. So no need to rush Trubisky on the field. I think Glennon ends up winning it out of camp. But like you guys mentioned, I would not be surprised to see Trubisky by the end of the season. It's just, that's what it feels like, a classic sort of case of that, rookie takes over at some point.
Yeah, I'm with you. For the season, the schedule starting off: Falcons, Bucks, Steelers, Packers, Vikings, Ravens. If it's not going well for Glennon early, and Trubisky shows he's got a good grasp, we could see him even week 7 or 8.
Would not surprise me. Would not surprise me whatsoever. All right, let's keep it moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, who, while it's kind of been decided, it looks like Brian Hoyer will be the starter there. Matt Barkley showed something last year, and they didn't sign him just to be – I don't think they signed him just with him being a complete backup in mind. I think they liked what they saw. I don't want to say upside, but I think they liked what they saw in terms of developmental potential there.
You're basically saying upside, Mike.
No, I said I didn't want to say upside, so I'm not saying it. But developmental potential – they thought they saw something there. Is there something there? Is there something to where Barkley could be starting before season's over? Because, like we know with Brian Hoyer, you don't want him starting at the end of the season. So. Yeah,
no, we, that Sam Monson threw out a great stat last year with Hoyer's, kind of season split. September and October, 93.1 quarterback passer rating. November and on, 70.2. So whether it, I don't know what it is with this game, but it's just never been able to sustain over a full season. So I think we're kind of in a similar situation as some of these other teams we've talked about. If Hoyer's playing well, I would expect him to be the guy the entire season. Even if he slips a little bit, I would assume that they would just kind of stick with him. If injuries, something else happen, I think you can see Barkley, who's gotten a ton better since he's gotten in the NFL. I think. We questioned his arm coming out and those things. And last year we saw, shoot, he can throw, he can push the ball down the field. He's got a good feel for the pocket. It's just kind of those 2 or 3 decisions a game that he makes that you kind of leave scratching your head. But both guys can play. I mean, it's just a matter of getting everything's got to be pretty perfect around them, and it's going to be interesting to see just how this whole season plays out with both those guys.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be Brian Hoyer's job. But just to touch on Barkley for a second, one of the ways I love to break down quarterbacks, we always do it over on the Big Time Throwcast, talking about their positively graded throws, negatively graded throws. Barkley, if nothing else, was exciting when he played last year. He had the highest percentage of positively graded throws when he was out there. Small sample size, but highest percentage of positively graded throws in the entire NFL in that small sample last year. So he was chucking it around, had a ton of drops, but he was also 4th highest in negatively graded throws and way up there in turnover-worthy throws as well. So a lot of exciting, good and bad things happened with Barkley. Led the league in turnover-worthy throws last year. But, he gives guys a chance. He was just chucking the ball to somebody, his team or the other team.
That Titans game was one of the most insane quarterback performances I've ever seen. He had 316 yards and 13 drops from his receivers.
It was
and
insane.
2 game-winning touchdowns dropped at the end of the game.
Yeah, a bunch in the end zone and everything. It was crazy. And it was one of those things, it was like Barkley had such low expectations. Everybody's like, oh, he's just been a backup forever. There were enough good things there that were like, hey, Matt Barkley can do some things. And then he come back with, 19 turnover-worthy plays in about 5 games. And it's like, all right, well, that's the downside too. But the thing I think I'm going to watch right now is, it's Hoyer working in Kyle Shanahan's system. Hoyer's not the long-term answer there. The Niners, Shanahan and John Lynch as GM, they essentially have like lifetime deals over there right now. So they can take their time, find their quarterback. They're not going to be a very good team this year, I don't think. So see what Hoyer can do in Shanahan's system. Just watch Shanahan call plays and make Hoyer look pretty good because Shanahan's maybe the best play caller in all of the NFL. But, it's a 1-year thing or maybe a 2-year thing for Hoyer because, they've got a quarterback that they're going to be looking – they're going to be looking in the draft to get their next guy.
One of the kind of underrated things about this competition, probably the last point here, is that these guys played well last year. Zach kind of touched on it in the Bears segment there. But Brian Hoyer had a grade of 82.1. That was right. Alex Smith's grade last year was 82, so in that sort of range of quarterback play. And Matt Barkley had a grade of 76.6, which Cam Newton was at 76.1 last year. So they were playing at a fairly solid quarterback level. These guys weren't bad whatsoever. So it'll be interesting to see if, Kyle Shanahan can tap into them to some degree and maintain that
Only
level of play.
Only because Hoyer didn't have a chance to play in the second half, like Zach pointed out. He didn't
true.
have a chance to regress. Maybe he's just due to regress. Or just bench him in November.
I was going to say, that's the strategy. All right, let's move on to the Houston Texans, the other one here that has probably some pretty significant playoff implications to it. The Texans defense figures to be one of the best in the NFL. Once again, it carried them in Brock Osweiler all the way to playoffs last season. Tom Savage versus Deshaun Watson. Who's it going to be week 1?
I think it's going to be Tom Savage. I think he'll have a pretty firm grasp on it, throughout the preseason. I'm more curious really than any other player to watch Deshaun Watson, through the preseason and just kind of how he progresses, just because it's going to be so much different than what he was asked to do at Clemson. Just Bill O'Brien's, that system, knowing how complex and everything is and the, multiple reads that you're getting to. You didn't see him have to do that really at Clemson. So I think of all these guys, he's going to have the hardest time just, getting acclimated of playing, in the pocket, progressing through his reads, those types of things. But unless Savage does really something to mess it up, I don't see him losing this job. And I think he'll maintain it throughout the season unless, he starts playing really bad, which I think their defense should be so good that, that should free him up to just play a conservative brand of football.
Watson was one of the more difficult evaluations in the entire draft process. Zach and I went back and forth quite a bit discussing him. I think he can make all the throws that he needs to make as far as, driving the ball up the seam and, throwing with touch. I think he can do a lot of things. I know Zach's always had concerns about the progressions. Can he get from 1 to 2 to 3, stuff that he either couldn't do at Clemson or wasn't asked to do at Clemson. And I think that is a big question, the feel in the pocket and his ability to get through progressions. So those are all, fair questions for Watson, but I still think he's extremely talented. And I hate to drop that it factor on you guys, but if you're talking about it factor and off the field and he's going to work hard and all those things that you just at least want to be in line, Watson supposedly has those all in line. So that's what he has going for him. I can still see Savage being the guy, but I think they want Watson to be the guy sooner rather than later.
What if, and let me just float this out there as a possibility, what if you started Deshaun Watson and just went incredibly run heavy, option heavy football, used his running threat as, the number one, became one of the run heaviest teams in the NFL, leaned on the defense, didn't put him in difficult situations. Is there a chance he's a better option than Tom Savage starting out with just that, what an option attack brings to an offense like that?
Oof, that's a tough one. I think Savage is, I think he's good enough to kind of get this offense going. He's got a good arm. He's got some ability to work through the progressions and the pre-snap stuff that's so important in that offense. I don't know. I think it would have to be a pretty simple thing that you'd have to get with Watson to play him, and I don't want to see him running. There was times last year where he was taking shots on the shoulder, and man, you wonder if those shots that he took in college, taking him at the next level, if that's gonna wear over time. Because that Alabama game, you guys saw, that first half he was getting rocked, and so I would not like to see him in that situation. But I think Savage has enough to get this offense going a little bit.
Yeah, I would have my concerns with the run-heavy offense just because, it worked in 2012 with RG3 in Washington and a little bit with the 49ers that year with Kaepernick, but it was kind of catching the league off guard at that point. I don't think you can catch the league off guard any longer, and I would be concerned about him taking hits. He was definitely a big part of the design running game at Clemson, and he's a good runner, and I think, you might be able to – I would scheme some stuff for Watson as far as, do some zone read type of stuff, do a little bit more on that end, take advantage of his athleticism and try to ease him in a little bit. But a complete run-heavy attack and almost duplicating, say, maybe the 2012 Redskins with RG3, I think that's very, very difficult to do in the NFL without getting your quarterback, hit way more than you want him to.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. While that might be an option to get him on the field early, it's maybe not the best option to start subjecting him to hits at that level right away. So yeah, I tend to agree. I think Tom Savage wins this one as well. Let's keep it moving to a couple of competitions that aren't quite competitions. They're more just what if type of situations here. The Chiefs are the first one here with Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes. Is there any way Patrick Mahomes starts without Alex Smith getting injured this season?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I think, they drafted Mahomes, obviously long-term projection. We talked about it after the draft. The biggest thing for Mahomes is just get him a ton of practice reps in the pocket. Just make him play more discipline and let him, have some flying balls, because scout team is very, very difficult to run. And I think him just getting those reps is going to be huge. Alex Smith, I don't think there's going to be a lot of hype, I'm sure, during preseason practices and maybe even preseason games if Mahomes makes a certain type of throw and people saying, well, Alex Smith can't make that throw. I don't think he cares. I think he's just going to play his game. He knows what he is. He's completely fine with that. And barring any meltdown or, like you said, injury, I don't think there's any way we really see Mahomes.
Yeah, so Alex Smith is the guy, but clearly Kansas City said, we don't think we can win with Alex Smith. Last year I don't know that their defense was one of the best in the league last year as far as overall numbers or just their consistency, but in any given week, that Kansas City defense, I think, can play championship level D. They can shut down some good offenses, and they got into the playoffs, and they did a great job against Pittsburgh's offense, holding them to 1 million field goals, and they could not score against Pittsburgh's defense, which was average at best. So I think they just said, look, we've had 4 years of Alex Smith. We know exactly what he is. We want Patrick Mahomes, but they do have to have patience with Patrick Mahomes. They have to be patient because he's not only coming out of the Texas Tech system, which is an adjustment, but his own playing style being such a, off the cuff type of player, outside of the scheme type of player. Can't wait to watch him in preseason and just see how he's handling it. But they have to have some patience with him, roll with Alex Smith. But man, there might be a point in the season where they just say, you know what? Let's just see what we have with Mahomes and let him chuck the ball around the field and try to score some points, because they know what they have with Alex Smith, and I don't know that they have confidence in him in the playoffs. So I think they want Mahomes to be ready by playoff time so that they could potentially catch lightning in a bottle.
That's what I was going to ask. So what is, if it's not this regular season, what is the timetable for Patrick Mahomes? Because Alex Smith has a $20 million cap hit next season, the last year of his deal. They could get out from under that, but is Patrick Mahomes going to be ready by year 2? Is that when you think he starts seeing the field?
I think so. I personally think he'll be ready to roll, and just everybody will be so excited to see what this kid can do on the field that there's no way they'd be able to hold off another full season without seeing him. So I think he can be ready. I think he seems like he's kind of first one in, last one out, loves the game, that type of thing. So I think he'll be able to pick up the system and be ready to roll season 2 there.
There you have it. I tend to agree. I think that it's year 2. I just don't see him, even as Steve said, I don't see him coming in the playoffs if they get there. I don't truthfully see them getting the playoffs, but I don't see him subbing in tagging him in like Colin Kaepernick did down the stretch for the Chiefs.
I think that could be what it is. They're going to push Alex Smith out.
Alex Smith gets pushed out again.
Yeah.
That'd be tough.
I mean, they were at home, a number 2 seed against an average Pittsburgh defense. They said, that's it. That's our cap. That's our limit. I don't think they want to do it again.
That did hurt, though. That they really should not. They should have scored more points in that game. That was that was bad offense all the way around. On to the last one here. Minnesota Vikings. Sam Bradford will start most likely. Teddy Bridgewater has started camp on the PUP. Is Bridgewater, does he ever have a chance of getting his job back? Or is he done for the Vikings?
Man, I don't know. I hope he has a chance. I think you look at these two guys like side by side, and I mean, they have a different style in how they do things, but gosh, at the end of the day, they end up almost identical players, kind of a production standpoint. I don't know. They do a different style, but I think I prefer kind of Bridgewater's game a little bit more. If he can get that knee right and get it back healthy, I think he could step in and regain that position. But with so much uncertainty with that knee and how he's coming back, especially with kind of how he plays the game, he kind of good feel in the pocket, and he's moving around, playing on the move some. It's going to be tough to see. But looking at both these guys side by side, it's not too much difference in production.
I agree on the production side. I think ultimately the Vikings say, look, they hope that Teddy Bridgewater can get back to what he was and just kind of see if he could take that next step as a quarterback. I'm still on that Sam Bradford apologist spectrum, though. I want to have a season where he is just behind a good offensive line with a bunch of playmakers, and I don't think this is going to be that year with Minnesota. So whether it's Minnesota in the future or somewhere else, I still think Sam Bradford has a chance to have some success, but I think Minnesota ultimately wants Teddy to just miraculously be healthy, get back and see if he can develop and take that next step, where I think with Bradford, you have a pretty good idea of what he is at this point, and he would need that, impeccable supporting cast of receivers and offensive line for him to take the next step. Teddy might be able to elevate some lesser teammates more than Bradford, so I think they're hoping to get him healthy and see if he could be a little bit better than Bradford down the road.
Yeah, your Bradford hypothetical is interesting because I thought if they would have had an actual run game that, could keep them on schedule last year, they would have had a lot more success offensively, just because Bradford was completely unwilling to go down the field. Third downs, he was checking down. If they got into favorable situations, he's, deadly accurate in that short passing game. But if you're in 3rd and 10s, he's not the guy I want picking up that 10 yards. He's just not willing to, attempt dangerous throws down the field like we saw last year, and that offense struggled because of it. So if Dalvin Cook is the answer, they get back to, a successful run game. Maybe that offensive line holds up a little bit better, gives them a little more time. It'd be interesting to see, but like you said, he's not like the guy who's going to elevate teammates, and we've just never seen him do that over the course of his career. So Vikings are kind of stuck in purgatory, it seems like, at the moment.
Look, with Bradford, I still can't believe how well he played week 2 against Green Bay, just picked up the offense, incredible throws under pressure. I mean, he didn't keep it up. He didn't keep up that level of play all season, but man, that peak was impressive. Yeah. And I still don't think there's been a point.
17 points in that game, which was kind of
still looked great.
I know. I'm saying like that was the whole whatchamacallit, the whole.
That's classic Sam Bradford. That's the deal. But look, I still don't think there's been a point in Bradford's career where you just said, look, he's got all of these playmakers and he failed them. Now, has he elevated average playmakers? No. But if he just had, I keep going back to the 2015 Bengals, A.J. Green and Tyler Eifert and Marvin Jones, I would love to see him with that type of supporting cast. I think he could do some really good things. Minnesota might not be the place over the next year or two, though, to see that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you look at his entire career, too, and he's played under so many different coordinators, throughout his career. He hasn't even been able to get set and truly an offense that he can kind of own and take on his own. So year 2 heading into this same system. So we'll see if he's kind of got firmer grasp on it and if he can make some of those throws he made under pressure last year. We talked about it on the podcast, Steve, but some of those throws that he makes when guys are just absolutely barreling down, he doesn't even care. He's letting it rip. If he can somehow maintain that level throughout an entire season, that's really his way of kind of elevating guys because he's not moving around, making a ton of out-of-structure plays. So going to be interesting to see, just a year 2 in this, system if he can elevate a little bit more.
There you have it. That's all the quarterback battles. Thank you so much, Zach, for joining us. Make sure to check him out on the Big Time Throwcast every week during the season. Thanks again, Zach.
Cool. Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it.
Those were the quarterback battles. We're going to go through and rapid fire through some of the more intriguing other positional battles around the NFL that Steve and I wanted to talk about. The first one in our hometown here of Cincinnati, the running back position. They drafted Joe Mixon in the second round. They've invested in that position heavily with Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard in recent years in the draft as well. Who do you see making it out on top? Who gets the bulk of the carries there for Cincinnati?
I think Mixon eventually becomes the guy, right? I mean, I know you were high on him coming out of the draft. I know you have to give the caveat off-field aside with Joe Mixon, but he's a first-round talent, and he's a guy that they can use in the short passing game, and they can split him out wide. He's just really good as far as receiving, rushing. The usual question for a rookie running back, can he pick things up in pass protection? But assuming he can pick up the playbook, I think he's the guy. He's going to get the carries. He's going to get the targets. What you get in Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard at this point. They want Joe Mixon to be that guy.
The crazy thing is, Joe Mixon is almost like a perfect combination of Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill. He's Jeremy Hill's size, but then he moves and can catch like Giovanni Bernard out of the backfield. So I definitely think he wins the job, gets the bulk of the carries. I don't even see Jeremy Hill seeing the field much unless they're on goal line situations. I was never a fan of Hill. Even that big rookie year he had, his advanced stats were not good. Didn't grade out well, one. And for the type of back he is, a lumbering, larger back, his broken tackle rate was incredibly low, which if you're that type of back and your broken tackle rate's not good, you better have incredible vision, which I wasn't impressed with either. So it was more of a fluke that rookie year than a sign of things to come, and I think we've seen that over the next 2 seasons. If he wasn't such a good fantasy back, in terms of the touchdowns he gets, I think everyone would be calling for anyone else there to start for Cincinnati.
I'm with you on Hill. You mentioned vision. I think that's the biggest thing with him. They run the zone-heavy scheme in Cincinnati, and he just doesn't have that really good feel for how to hit the hole and how to set up blocks. And I think they've run out of patience with that, with that style of Hill. And again, they want Mixon to be the guy and Bernard, to be the change of pace guy, which he still can be, and he still has, does a pretty good job of.
Agreed. Let's move on to another running back position. The New Orleans Saints, who for some reason signed Adrian Peterson this offseason, maybe the most Saints contract of all time. They signed a big name free agent for 2 years, $7 million. It's not breaking the bank by any means, but they already had a guy filling that position in Mark Ingram. They don't even run the ball that much. But what do you make of this? Who gets the bulk of the carries? Do all three, Adrian Peterson, Mark Ingram, and Alvin Kamara, get significant playing time?
So look, this is out of my nature to say this, but I think the Saints should actually run the ball more. And I know that the NFL is just, inviting teams to pass the ball with the way the rules are, and you've got Drew Brees. Why would you pass the ball more? But when you watch the Saints, I feel like Drew Brees is always working with such a small margin for error. That defense has been so bad the last couple of years. I do think they need to protect that defense a little bit more than they have. And there was a point in the middle of last season where I felt like they started to run the ball a little bit and protect the D, and the defense did a better job. So I think they want to run the ball more and have that two-headed monster of Mark Ingram and Adrian Peterson, two guys that can break tackles. And yes, they're very similar players, but I think they want to use those two guys and then use Alvin Kamara as that change of pace guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. He was just unreal at times for Tennessee last year, taking over games. So I kind of like it. And I think, I know it's a lot of money for Peterson and all that, but if he can, 15 carries a game, he could be unbelievable like he was a few years ago.
No, there's zero chance of I get
Zero
him of
chance?
being unbelievable. He's 32
still a
years
freak.
old.
He's still a freak. It doesn't matter.
I could see him being effective, and I think the Saints' offensive line gets slept on a little bit. They should be pretty good, at least in terms of run blocking this year. They added Larry Warford. I think Andrews Pete is finally getting to stick at guard and come into his own at that position, can become a good run blocker there. Max Unger in the middle, and then Ryan Ramczyk, I think, will at least be a good run blocker year one. So could be a good run blocking line. They could have some success on the ground. I'm on with you. Take some pressure off Drew Brees. Don't ask him to do it all this year. Give it to these running backs. I still hate the move of signing Adrian Peterson because it really gives you nothing that Mark Ingram doesn't at this point. But if they do go more run heavy, I'm not going to hate it as much as I do right now. But so we'll see them go more run heavy, and I'll get more on board. Keep it moving to the Eagles defensive end position. They drafted Derek Barnett in the first round. But, they're paying Vinny Curry almost $10 million a year to be a situational pass rusher. And then they signed Chris Long as well. So we know Brandon Graham's going to start on one side, the left side there most likely. Again, who starts on the right side? Who gets the bulk of those snaps?
I would love to see Derek Barnett be the guy. I think he could step in and be the guy. I mean, he was number 2 or 3 on our entire draft board last year. Similar production to number 1 overall pick Myles Garrett in the SEC since they both came in as true freshmen in 2014. I want to see Brandon Graham, first of all, convert those pressures to sacks finally this year. Can he finally do that and quiet some of the Eagles fans that tell us, no way he's good? And we're like, no, he's really good.
He is good. Yeah.
He'll get those sacks. He will get them. One of these years, he'll get 15 sacks. You watch. But I think Barnett, once he's ready, he ends up becoming the guy. Chris Long, I think, had some success in more of a rotational role last year in New England, and I think that's what Vinny Curry does too. So it's good depth. It's good depth to have, but Derek Barnett, he can play the run, he can rush the passer. He's the guy that, it'll be his job once he's ready.
Can Derek Barnett kick inside on third downs? Could you theoretically have him on the interior? Is that something he can do?
I feel like Curry would be better.
Curry's the guy who does that normally for them, but is Barnett, if you wanted to get a little crazy?
I don't see why not, but I know the critics of Barnett would say, well, he jumps snaps and, he gets to the edge so quickly by just having a good feel for the snap, and maybe that doesn't always work at the NFL level. So maybe that won't work as well for him in the interior. I don't love him as an interior rusher, but I'd give him a shot at it. I mean, him one-on-one with guards, I think he can win. I still think he's more of an edge type guy, though.
I agree. I think Barnett sees the bulk of the snaps there. Let's move on to the cornerback position. A couple teams having some wide open competitions. The Green Bay Packers won. They've drafted in the first or second rounds the past handful of years Demarius Randall, Quentin Rollins, Kevin King now. They've also signed Devon House, who was formerly with the Packers, went to Jacksonville for a couple of years, is now back with the Packers. They have Ladarius Gunter there. They have Demetri Goodson. What's the rotation here? How does it work out when it's all said and done?
Oh, man. Let me ask you first. Look, I still think Demarius Randall and Quentin Rollins can see some serious playing time. I know they've had their ups and downs throughout their career and everything, but I still think ultimately you want those guys, your top 2 picks from 2015, to be the guys. Devon House has had a lot of success in his career, just hasn't been able to do it consistently. And then Kevin King, as you mentioned, second-round pick in 2017. I think he's that – I'm not going to say upside, Mike, but he's that pure athlete.
We got to stop.
Length. He's got all these tools that they think is going to be turn into a great player. How did I do that?
That was pretty
right?
good. That was a good
tools
job
that lead to a great player. I don't think he's there yet. There's a lot of ugly plays for Kevin King so far. So
there are a lot of ugly plays
right.
for him. At the same time, everyone else there in that cornerback room has a lot of ugly plays on tape so far. So
very true.
It's
very true.
The Damaris Randall thing, I want to think that he was incredibly hurt last year while he was playing, because what I saw from him was just awful. Most of the time. He had a game week 1 against the Jaguars where he was fantastic. Since then, it was all downhill. Very disappointed in him. I thought he showed enough as a rookie that I thought he'd take a next step forward. I still, though, if rumors are to be true, I think that groin really was hurting him. It was the reason why he wasn't as effective. I think he can be at least average this year. I think he wins one of the cornerback spots. I think then you have to have Kevin. I think Kevin King's going to get every single chance to win the other one. The thing is, they run so much dime that they could have realistically Rollins, House, King, and Randall all seeing significant time. I just think Gunter has to be the odd man out here in terms of playing time after what we saw from him last year.
Yeah, you talk about ugly reps. He had just some horrendous games. The Dallas game back in week 6 comes to mind. He was just torched left and right. I know he's and then the Atlanta game in the conference championship. I know he's had some flashes throughout his, at times where he's looked really good, but man, I think he is the odd man out as well. I agree that they want King to be the guy. I just don't know if it's going to show up early in the season or in the preseason where they say, okay, he's ready. I just don't know if that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the other cornerback team I was mentioning, the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of turnover there. Lost Morris Claiborne, lost Brandon Carr. They have Anthony Brown, who had a good rookie year as a late-round pick. Orlando Scandrick, who's had great years in the past. And then Jordan Lewis, the draft pick this season, Chidobe Awuzie, Marquez White, all rookies, and they added Nolan Carroll from the Philadelphia Eagles. What do we see from this cornerback group?
So I see versatility, which I love. I really like what they did in the draft. You throw Byron Jones in there, who was a cornerback out of UConn. They've played him at safety. He's been covering tight ends. He brings some versatility back there. I think they're building an extremely versatile secondary. You mentioned Scandrick, so he's going to play the slot. I think Anthony Brown has locked down an outside spot after his impressive rookie season. If you want a starter on the other side, I think I want Jordan Lewis over Nolan Carroll as an outside corner who then can also play in the slot. And Chidobe Awuzie has that experience outside and inside as well, coming out of Colorado. I think Jordan Lewis, though, when they see him play, that guy can play man coverage. My question with him is against those bigger receivers, will he be able to hold up? But I think if you're talking about covering an Odell Beckham, who's as shifty as it gets and can run routes, I think Jordan Lewis might be the best guy to match up against him on this team. And you throw in Xavier Woods, a safety out of Louisiana Tech that they get in the 5th round, another really versatile guy that can cover the slot. They've just thrown a lot of guys that can cover outside in the slot or play safety. They're throwing them all in the backfield, and they're going to play matchups with opposing teams.
They do. I love their draft. Jordan Lewis, the most intriguing name to me. Obviously, I was a huge fan of him. I thought, obviously, it went lower because of off-field issues, but I thought he was a borderline first-round talent. Could have gone there without the off-field stuff. He's so good. Was so good in man coverage at Michigan. Obviously, doesn't quite have the size to where that's going to translate amazingly well to the NFL, but I still think he can get the job done right away in terms of an outside cornerback position there. So I like what they've done. Anthony Brown's the intriguing name to me. Was that rookie year a fluke or was it not? He had 2 games, one against Washington, one against Green Bay, where he allowed over 100 yards. Everything thrown his way, he was giving up. But then every other game, it seems like he was incredibly played at a very high level. Had a 3-game stretch there from weeks 13 to 15 where he only allowed 1 catch a game. Was just played at a higher level than you'd ever expect a 6th-round pick to play. But again, is it a fluke? A guy was a 6th-round pick. Can you rely on him to be that outside corner and play at the same level he did a season ago? That remains to be seen.
It's a fair question, Mike.
I like what they have, though. Even though they lost a couple of guys who we knew could play at this point, I still like what they have. Probably more than what I saw from the Packers last year, I'll say.
It's a fair question on Brown, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's Awuzie and Jordan Lewis who are the starters either by the end of the season or going into 2018. Wouldn't be surprised, but you still have to be really encouraged when you get a 6th-round pick like Anthony Brown that is that good. So like I said, they're throwing a bunch of guys in the mix and seeing what sticks, and I think that is a great It's a great strategy, and like where Dallas is going in the secondary.
And yeah, like you said, you have to be good at cornerback to win a Super Bowl. Pretty much every team we've seen in the past 10 to 11 years has had at least two good cornerbacks. So you have to be good there if you expect to win Super Bowls. All right.
Absolutely.
On to a couple of offensive lines here to wrap up. The Seattle Seahawks, it's just a mess. We know Justin Britt starts at center. That's about the only position we know. How does this shake out when it's all said and done?
All right. So they had George Fant at left tackle last year, who was, I'm going to put this in quotes, good for a basketball player, but bad for a football player last year. I don't think he's going to be the left tackle, right? I can't imagine they roll with him again. They bring in Luke Jokel.
If he did win the job, that would be encouraging, though. If they thought
if he goes through the competition and wins the job, maybe that's encouraging. Or it's just Luke Jokel's that bad and his competition's that bad.
Well, he was the best offensive lineman in the NFL through 3 weeks. Steve, did you not hear Tom Gable?
Oh my gosh, I did not hear that.
He said, I'm not sure that's the exact quote. I should probably look that up before I source that, but continue, though.
Well, look, when you evaluate George Fant, if it doesn't start with good for a basketball player, then you're being a little delusional. He was bad for an NFL football player last year, and it's really tough to go into a season with him as your starting left tackle unless he takes a massive step forward. Does Luke Jokel get in there and maybe compete? Jokel's had a very disappointing career after being a top 2 pick. So, they're probably going to have a hole at tackle there. Jermaine Ifedi, their 2016 first-round pick, is he going to be the right tackle this year? He still has a lot of work to do in pass protection, showed some signs of life as a run blocker at right guard last year, but it looks like tackle is going to be an issue. I think interior, though, Ethan Pozick, their second-round pick out of LSU, I think if you put him at guard, he played center at LSU, you put him at guard next to Britt, you got a couple pretty good players there. Mark Lewinsky, he's okay, I think, as a run blocker. So I think you're looking at a line that is getting a little bit better as far as the run game goes and everything, but it still comes down to pass protection and protecting Russell Wilson. And I just don't see anything that says they're going to be much better than they were last year when they were one of the bottom 3 lines in the entire league.
I agree. And here was the quote, actually. This guy played left guard last year, and I don't know if there was a better guy playing left guard in football last year. Tom Cable. So I'll say it, Tom. I know that they're probably...
Is he talking about Lewinsky?
No, that was about Luke Jokel last year.
Oh, about Jokel.
So, yeah, he doesn't know if there's a better guy. Marshall Yanda played left guard some last year, so I think I know that there was a better one. But
yeah, Yanda may have been better.
That's just me. But yeah, I do think Jokel starts at left tackle. I think they kick him back out there. And I think, like you said, Pocic has to win one of the interior jobs because he's probably their best lineman after maybe Justin Britt. And then you don't draft Ifedi in the first round to not let him start. I can't see how you wouldn't put him at tackle with what they have at right tackle, which is nothing. So, yeah, I think that's how it shakes.
You know what's funny, though? Justin Britt did not have success at any position until he played center. But now you look at this roster, Pozick was a center at LSU. He's 6'7". I think he can honestly play anywhere along the offensive line, but he was an excellent center at LSU. And then Joey Hunt was a 6th-round center in 2016.
We love
undersized. Hunt. Love Joey Hunt, right? Don't we all love Joey Hunt?
Honestly, I'd start him at guard. I think he's better than what they have at guard.
But I'd almost put, would you roll Britt back? You have 3 guys,
3 centers.
I think, that could play center, right? You have all these centers. You don't have a tackle. And you have a bunch of questions at guard. I mean,
no one knows who's going to snap the ball and then a given play really throws the defense off.
Now we're talking creativity back there. I like it.
That could be the next. That could be market inefficiency. Multiple centers.
The market inefficiency. Well, the 2014 Patriots had 4 centers out there at a time too. So they started this whole trend.
Yeah. All right. On to the Chargers. Last one here. Their offensive line as well. Little bit of a log jam. They have, the tackles are probably set. Russell Okung, Joe Barksdale, those will be the tackles. But then on the interior, they have Forrest Lamp, they have Max Turk, they have Dan Feeney, they have Matt Slauson, they have, who's the name I'm missing here? Spencer Pulley as well. All of those guys possible to start. What would you line them up like?
A lot of potential here, Mike, with this Chargers offensive line. We love Lamp, but he's going to be a guard. Lamp is going to be a guard. I'd still give him a shot at tackle.
I know.
Go back and listen to our draft podcast. We were talking about Lamp. I compare it to baseball, where you let a prospect be a starting pitcher until he just can't do it anymore, then you make him a reliever.
Yes.
I think the NFL should do more of this. Let a guy play tackle until he absolutely shows that he can't do it. Don't just look at his arms and say, well, they're too short, he can't play tackle. Give Forrest Lamp a chance to play tackle in camp, in preseason, maybe even during the season. And if he fails, fine, put him at guard. But I think they're going to start him at guard. So Forrest Lamp's going to be a guard. He was their second-round pick. Third-round pick was Dan Feeney. I think they'll give him a shot to play, but I think Matt Slosson's probably a better player right now, so I'm fine with him at guard. But 2016 third-round pick, Max Turkey, missed all of last season. I liked him quite a bit coming out of USC. I think he can win the center job. And then if Dan Feeney eventually moves in there, you're talking about 3 rookies or second-year players on the interior who I think are all pretty good players and will become pretty good players. So maybe not this year for the Chargers, but I think they're going to get better than they were last year. And in the future, I think they're looking pretty good. I like the youth that they've added along the offensive line these last couple seasons.
Yep, I've made my opinion known about the Chargers and the fact that their O-line will finally get fixed. They've moved out of San Diego. That's what it took. The offensive line is going to be all right this year, so I do think it's Lamp at left guard. If it's Slauson at center, I wouldn't be upset, but I do think Turk, you didn't draft him in the third round to let him sit on the bench. I think he ends up winning the center job, and then Dan Feeney at right guard. They finally fix that interior, get a run game going. On the Charger bandwagon, Steve, there's room for you if you'd like to hop on. It's filling up. I've been convincing so many people, but feel free.
They seem to be the fun pick, right? I mean, the AFC West between the Chiefs, the Chargers,
it's a loaded
Raiders,
division.
Broncos. Yeah. It's very good. It's very good. Each team at least brings something to the table, and not a lot of teams that are complete in that division. But there's some good defenses. There's some good offensive. And look, if they can keep Phillip Rivers, that poor guy. I've never seen an offensive line collapse from more angles than it did last year in certain games. Just every single drop back, Rivers had somebody in his face. And, it should be better. And Phillip Rivers is still a very good quarterback, especially in a clean pocket. So they have a shot. They have a shot to live up to your big hype, Mike.
There you have it. Those are the training camp battles. We went over the QBs, some other positions. We'll be back with the One Late Week podcast. We haven't decided what it was. There was a mailbag last week. We'll do something fun again this week. We'll talk to you guys then.